Hey everyone, this is Laurie from Real Cinema Therapy, and today we are talking about the TV show From. Season 4 is just around the corner, and fans are incredibly excited. It premieres April 19th, which sounds really close, but at the same time, it still feels like it's a long way off. So while we wait, I thought it would be a really good time to talk about why this show resonates with so many people. The season 4 trailer was just released a couple of days ago, and it really, really looks great. And I will be reviewing that in another video, but I do want to tie it into the purpose of this video. So before we do that, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. So this way you will know when my From videos are going to drop, and it also will help the channel grow. Thank you. Now, let's get into it. So, From is a multi layered and symbolic show. It is what we call a mystery box series because the audience tries to solve the puzzles and piece together clues. So, fans love that about From. They love to talk about their theories and speculate about what the town is, who the monsters are, and what all the symbols mean. But From is not just a horror story about monsters. At its core, it's really a story about interrupted lives. Every resident of the town was traveling down a road when they encountered the fallen tree that forced them to turn around. And without realizing it, that detour led them into the town of From. Now, once they arrive, they can't leave. They are forced to live there while desperately trying to find a way out. In that moment, they lose something very important. They lose the sense of safety and control over their lives and the future that they were building. So I think this is one of the main reasons the show really resonates with so many viewers. We can all relate to the feeling of being stuck or forced to deal with something we did not plan for. Most of us have experienced moments in life where it felt like we hit a tree on the road, an obstacle or a life event that suddenly changed the direction of where we were going. So sometimes those events are outside of our control, like a loss, a death, a health diagnosis, a relationship ending, a job disappearing, life choices that were made for us, leaving us to deal with the aftermath. We see this pattern again and again in From. For example, Jade had just sold his company for millions of dollars. He was celebrating his success with Toby when their car drove into From. So, in a sense, Jade is grieving the loss of everything that moment represented for him: his success, his wealth, and ultimately Toby's life. Magda, a bus driver, was about to retire, and that shift was supposed to be her final one. But before entering a quieter chapter of her life, instead she drove into a nightmare. Christy was engaged and on her way to meet her partner, Marielle, for lunch. What should have been a normal day becomes a permanent detour. And Boyd was celebrating his retirement. His wife had just bought him the boat he had always wanted. And while driving to see it, he encounters that tree in the road instead. Him and Tabitha were taking one last family vacation before divorcing. So instead of finding closure, they are thrown into survival mode. So notice what all of these characters have in common. They are in motion. They are in the middle of change. Their lives are moving forward with energy and momentum. And then suddenly that momentum stops and their energy dissipates. It's like they're frozen in place. Their lives have been ripped away from them. They've lost control. And when that happens and your life changes so dramatically, that's very traumatic. It also brings up grief. So the grief of the life you did not get to have, the grief of losing control over your own life. And that's exactly what the residents of From are experiencing. Trauma is what happens when loss overwhelms your nervous system and your ability to cope. Trauma itself is not just in the event, but it is how the body and the mind respond to it. So when something feels sudden and threatening, it's just too much to process. The mind shuts down, and basically the body goes into overdrive. Grief, on the other hand, is the emotional response to loss, losing someone, losing something that's important to you, or losing the version of your life that you thought you were going to have. Both trauma and grief can change people in life altering ways. So, in From, grief does not have the space it normally would have to settle down. Because in From, in this town, there is no closure, and the threat continues. It does not stop. So, because the fear remains active, the body and the mind do not get a chance to process trauma and heal. Because for grief to heal, it needs movement. It needs to be felt and expressed and processed. But in From, everyone is forced to remain in survival mode just to stay alive. When grief cannot move, it becomes stagnant. It gets stuck in the body and in the mind. And this can lead to something called traumatic grief. So, in other words, grief that has nowhere to go. And we see this play out with many of the characters in From. Kenny lost both of his parents in horrific ways. Boyd is forced to shoot his own wife. Father Kotry, who came to town hoping to redeem himself and help others, is killed. Jim, who was trying to repair his marriage and reconnect with his family, is cut down just as things were shifting. So these are not clean endings. They are abrupt, violent, and unresolved. People cope with traumatic grief in different ways. Some respond with anger. Ellis, for example, he holds on to his anger toward Boyd for killing his mother. That anger keeps him from fully grieving her loss. And some people cling to hope. So Fatima tells the story of her father's murder in a strangely detached way and says nothing will ever scare her again. She holds on to hope that things will improve. But unfortunately, in season 3, things became even worse for her when she gave birth to Smiley and killed Tilly. Some people respond by trying to control everything. And Donna is a great example of this. After witnessing her sister's death and living with the constant threat of the monsters, she copes by trying to maintain control over the environment. But in season 3, we begin to see cracks in that armor. The strength she shows is actually a mask that protects her vulnerability. Now, some people shut down emotionally. Kenny begins shutting down after losing both of his parents. It becomes harder for him to allow himself to feel vulnerable again. And then some become hypervigilant. Randall's trauma leaves him constantly uneasy and suspicious. He is always watching for danger. And then some people just numb out, like Marielle. She struggles with addiction and the urge to numb herself so she does not feel anything about what's going on there and she doesn't lose control of herself. Now, some tried to create meaning out of the chaos, and I think Tilly had attempted to try and do that, to bring calm to the town by holding meditation sessions and offering support to the others. Some turned to religion. Elgin believed the kimono woman might be an angel sent to help them escape. And Father Kotry believed that the town might represent the unwritten 74th book of the Bible. And then some tried to cope by serving others. Sarah wants to help people and redeem herself, but she also becomes manipulated by the forces within the town. So trauma and grief continue to shape and influence the people in From in ways they never expected and never wanted. And now, with season 4 approaching, we are left with even more psychological questions. How will Tabitha manage the guilt and trauma of Jim's death? How will Fatima cope with giving birth to Smiley and killing Tilly? How will Boyd process torturing Elgin and knowing that Sarah did it for him? And how will he deal with the realization that killing the monsters may not even be possible since Smiley returned? And what about Randall, Marielle, and Julie after the cicada coma? How will that experience affect their sense of reality and safety going forward? As we move into season 4, we are going to explore how unresolved trauma and grief continue to affect these characters and shape who they are becoming. In future videos, I will also be doing psychological deep dives into several of the characters and examining their behavior through a trauma lens. So stay tuned for those. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video soon.